Thanks for tuning in to Season 4 of Strange, Rare, and Peculiar Homeopathy Podcast, where homeopathy lives, breathes, and evolves with Denise Straiges and Alastair Gray. We'll be exploring modern practice, research, and philosophy, from Hahnemann's radical insights to today's breakthroughs and discoveries. Get ready for homeopathy woes, feedback from pros, and the more you knows.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. It is afternoon.
It is afternoon, and
It's
I need to
15:18
share.
according to your. That's good at universal time.
What do you mean?
I think
Oh, you mean the
24-hour clock.
Yeah, it's
not universal time. What am I talking about?
it's 18.
24.
It's 15:18.
I know. What is this beverage you've got for me?
Some hippie stuff I found on the fridge. Speaking of which,
Oh,
my goodness,
what?
that soup, that creation of yours.
We have
Oh,
this wild rice soup that is so delicious.
keeps you regular.
Really good for the digestion, they say.
But yeah, wild rice.
Yeah. Wow.
Not angry, not irritated, but wild.
Which, given the fact that the wild rice proving almost killed me, it's a wonder that I'll eat this stuff.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
I've got my notes over here talking about today. Talk about it.
What have you been teaching this week?
I mean, I guess I taught 3 classes yesterday. And last night I taught the intro to the autoimmune block, which is a big chunk of semester 4. And I love it because the first lecture, which is sort of the immune system, but also the state of play around autoimmunity in the allopathic medical paradigm, is I really think that there's a good deal of information to get a hold of to understand how autoimmunity is so predominant as kind of the major medical problem facing people now.
Something to get your teeth into.
Yeah, so that was good. So that's a 2-hour lecture. And then I taught in full-time year 2. We talked about communication strategies in homeopathy, and we had our posology roundtable. Nice. Which is always good. Yeah. And it's a really nice, it kind of comes at this point in the curriculum where, and it's interesting to talk about on the podcast, where last week we talked about, in some schools, they just teach you to throw the lot into the glass and then chug it down. And somehow the body decides what it needs and throws away the rest, which I'm all for higher intelligence of the human organism, but
that's taking it to a whole new
level. So we talked about sort of the nuances of posology between acutes and chronics, and what happens in the brackish water between the resolution of something that's acute and when that flips into what's chronic, and how do you know when the acute is finished and when the chronic begins? Yes, sir.
I got some examples, please, miss.
Yes, let's talk. I know. Well, there's a reason we're recording on a Wednesday and not last Friday, is because
I looked like a dog's tongue leg.
Yeah.
I was not good.
You got what I had.
I got it bad. I got it bad.
You got it bad, Pop.
Yeah.
So what? You got the black lung, Pop. Yeah. Back to that one again. So what happened? What do you want? So we're talking about dealing with acutes. And
there's a question for me.
Oh, what's the question?
And what about you, honey?
Honestly,
the law. I taught the law.
Right. You taught
homeopathy, ethics, and the law, and the establishment and the management of practice.
Which
that's a chunky topic to get into.
I mean, it's huge, and I think it's really important. And one of the things that I probably shouldn't even say this, but because my class was the follow-up to it, right? So this was you taught about legal issues and sort of all the legalities surrounding homeopathy, and then the corollary to it is sort of communication, which requires us to look at the landscape of the profession and what puts people in sort of legal risk, like when people aren't following best practice and sort of this, people who are cosplaying doctor.
Can I tell you the astonishment of students when they realized the implications of some of the things that I was emphasizing? For example, when you focus on Hahnemannian homeopathy,
Yeah.
right? Let's so I'm over here, I'm going to do something clinical, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the totality of characteristic symptoms of the complaint that you have since you're last healthy.
Yep.
Right?
Aphorism 6.
Right, there you go.
Well,
So-
I mean, that's the 6.
That's what we do.
7.
That's
Yeah.
what we do in homeopathy.
Yep.
Compare that to, oh, you're telling me that you have hay fever.
Yeah.
Here's a protocol.
Right.
In other words, from a purely legal perspective,
Yeah.
that that amazing tendency to allopathize named conditions and then give drug for that.
Yep.
This for that.
Yep.
I mean, astonishing the the difference, and I think the realization that students had just around that was enough.
Let's say that in a really clear way, because I think if you are a homeopath, and it's funny because you see people who sort of try to manage the language on a website to just, the homeopathic remedy is meant to bolster, a person's constitution or their overall health and da 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 da.
Right.
But if that's fine, and it should be, and that's true, but if you start by saying,
and you're selecting it, but you're selecting your remedy based on the name of the condition.
Right. Not only does Hahnemann say, well, that's just silly.
But it doesn't get closer to practicing medicine without a license than that.
Yeah, exactly.
And not for the faint-hearted. And in addition to that, causticum, nux vomica, and sepia.
Oh, yeah. So you had some good material.
Oh, yeah. And then tonight is pharmacy and posology.
Oh, you're teaching tonight, right? Which is why we're going to be late for stag and doe night, which is fine. We'll get there just in time. But so we're talking about acute.
As soon as I close my class, I'll be ready.
I'll be in the car.
All right, good.
Okay, stag and doe night for those who care. I mean, why would anybody care? But it's our town is so cute. We live in this part of the city of Philadelphia, and there are a few sort of neighborhoods that are adjacent to each other, 3 neighborhoods adjacent, and there's like an avenue that runs through that has beautiful shops and it's all lit up for Christmas and everything. And one of the little neighborhoods, it's not so little, but one of the neighborhoods has this all the Wednesdays at Christmas time, it's all lit up and the shops stay open until 9 o'clock and they serve, wine and cider and everything. And you just kind of walk up and down the avenue, they're carolers and you see all your friends. I like it. Anyway, so this idea though, I'm changing it up a tiny bit because you brought something up with it, which is the disease names. And so I thought I would just talk, kind of see what Hahnemann has to say about that. So we could go right to the footnote to aphorism 81, right? Where Hahnemann is talking about, he's really, in this instance, he's talking about the manifold presentations of the psoric miasmatic disease. But he's basically saying that he's talking about the ways in which all of the diseases are given names. And he says, these books contain so many improper, ambiguous names, under each of which are included highly different disease states that often only resemble one another in a single symptom. For example, ague, jaundice, dropsy, consumption, leukorrhea, hemorrhoids, rheumatism, stroke, convulsions, hysteria, hypochondria, melancholia, mania, quinsy, palsy, etc. These are declared to be unvarying fixed diseases in and of themselves and are dealt with according to the name, following ordinary established practice. How could the bestowal of such a name justify uniform medical management? And if the treatment is not always to be the same, then why use the identical name, which is misleading and presupposes the same treatment? Right? So basically, that's when you are a homeopath, if you are practicing according to principles, the disease name, with the exception of the fixed acute miasmatic diseases, which we would refer to as really like the childhood diseases, that
Mm.
those always go by the same names, and that there will be a handful of diseases for which, there is similarity in the presentation. But Hahnemann says, from all this, it becomes clear that these useless and wrongful disease names may not have any influence on the treatment mode of a genuine medical art practitioner who is aware that he is to judge and cure not according to the nominal similarity of a single symptom, but according to the entire complex of all the signs of the individual state of each single patient whose sufferings he has the duty to exactly spy out, never permitting himself to be merely hypothetically presuppose them. However, if one still believes that occasionally it is necessary to use certain disease names in order to be succinctly understood by ordinary people, then one should use these disease names only collectively and say, for example, the patient has a kind of St. Vitus dance, a kind of dropsy, a kind of nerve fever, a kind of ague. Never, however, so that the delusion in these names may finally cease once and for all, that he has the St. Vitus dance, the nerve fever, the dropsy, the ague, since there certainly are not any fixed, unvarying diseases by these or any similar names. So basically, individualization is the name of the game. That was just a little side thing,
Fantastic.
little side piece. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But you had an acute, didn't you?
By God, did I have an acute?
You didn't complain though.
No, because I never felt that unwell.
Wait, that was a joke, the part about you not complaining.
Oh, I see.
You really didn't think that when you
No.
were wandering around dying, moaning?
Moaning and dying. That's just a normal state for me. But
True.
because I felt like a healthy person that was sick. I didn't feel like a sick person that was sick.
Right.
And I've still got quite a chunky and fruity cough.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm glad you covered your mouth this time.
But yeah, a serious respiratory drama this week that went on for 10 days, 7 days.
And why did it go on for so long?
Because for 3 days, I could not for the life of me find phosphorus 200.
Because it was in your pocket.
No, it was in the pocket of a pair of pants
that were on the
that
floor
had leapt off a shelf and hidden themselves in the dark.
It's the thing of treating homeopaths, and I don't recommend it, because I would say, okay, we've identified the remedy that you need. Now, have you taken it? No, not yet. Well, what are you waiting for? An engraved invitation?
Let me translate. What Denise is actually trying to say is, honey, we were really worried about you. And as you were getting clearly better under the influence of phosphorus 200, your symptoms started to change. And I started to notice that really interesting interface where the acute disease starts to diminish and the chronic state re-emerge.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
what's been going on, what you call the brackish water.
I do,
and it's actually really skillful stuff, folks, because and in myself, I just notice my normalized chronic state
I think
starting to just reappear.
But the important thing to note is that you would have gotten a lot better were you a compliant.
I'm compliant.
You're agreeable.
I'm compliant. I couldn't find my remedy. That doesn't make me non-compliant. And there was nothing else in the cupboard.
Because they're all in the laundry. This is the thing. You're like a giant pharmacy, and no matter what.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
I'm better.
No one's going to believe. No one's going to believe.
I'm fine.
We're good homeopaths.
You see, my broken rib is now starting to reassert itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the interesting thing, is that the broken rib, it was like it suspended your susceptibility.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually why your cough was worse, was because if we looked at it from a bacteriological standpoint, it was like it was sitting there festering. You did not get the acute the whole time I had it.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right. You had it for 10 days.
After I just said to you about not taking your remedy, I took 1 dose of one remedy and that was it. Why didn't I don't know. Anyway, but so I guess because when we talk about acutes, one of the things is, how to you got to think about whether or not to prescribe and when to let it ride.
So is it an acute? Is the question,
Yeah,
I
is it
believe.
truly acute? So if we're going to talk about acute, if we're going to talk about this idea of something being acute, we have to then talk about its corollary, which is something that is chronic. Most of us in the 21st century will have some, they're going to have some level of, underlying chronic, from the standpoint of Hahnemann's homeopathy, this sort of the chronic underlayment, the miasmatic disease. That doesn't mean you have a diagnosed chronic disease. I think that's the first thing that's important to say. We just have, it's there. And as Hahnemann talks about in the chronic diseases, when life is favorable, you're eating good food, people are nice, got a good job, the weather's good, nobody's on your nerves,
Get a park.
you get a parking spot, then your symptoms of your chronic issue could be quiet, right? That's that sort of dormant miasmatic disease. But then things, life kind of gives you a shove, and then those symptoms can reveal themselves.
Life gives you a shove.
Life gives you a shove, and so it's a really interesting question around sort of when does a person need to take a homeopathic remedy and when do you not, and and like there's almost a stigma of a homeopath like having a cold or being sick, like, well, why didn't you just take a remedy and get over it, right? And I think that there's a difference between someone who's sick and really suffering and you're prescribing and they get over it, because the idea of the remedy is to help a person move more quickly through whatever it is that they've got. And then there are times when you need to rest. It's like a power down kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And you take a remedy, you know that you're on the mend, and you know that giving your body what it needs in terms of quiet and, good food and just lowering the stress or whatever is actually a part of the healing process. I think we don't give that enough credence. I was surprised when we were talking with our team about this topic. And as I've mentioned before, we've got some people who are on social media in the groups in a way that I do not participate. And I was surprised to hear that there are people who literally will prescribe a remedy for their kids who have a difficult time transitioning from one activity to the next, like giving them a remedy, for their frustration with a transition. I mean, I think it's like I almost don't even know how to put this into a context because it feels quite foreign, to prescribe so so heavy-handedly, you know? So I think it's important to think about sort of, do you always prescribe on something that is acute? When is a time when you would and when is a time you wouldn't, right? And so I think the difference between something chronic and something acute, something acute is typically going to have an exciting cause. And maybe that exciting cause it could be a virus, right? But it could be a cold wind sitting on a cold pavement. As my grandmother would say, get it a piles. You sit on the cold pavement. It could be a grief or some emotional thing. And then what happens is, and this is how you know that that something is truly acute, is that the chronic state shifts. And so where a person would otherwise have their regular stuff, those go quiet, those disappear, and the smaller, more like contracted state of that acute shows itself. Right? Is that how you would describe it to sort of a general audience?
Exactly it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that acute, you've got to identify it and identify it accurately. Not everything's an acute.
Right.
And so for me, my working definition of an acute,
Yep.
5 things. It comes quickly, it goes quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's therefore of short duration.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Those 3 things.
Yep.
It's colorful, or the symptoms are intense.
Right.
And it's self-limiting.
Yep.
Meaning that if you do nothing, you'll die or you won't.
Yeah. Okay. So there's one thing that a little caveat to that, because what's interesting is if you're in the allopathic world, something will be defined as chronic based on the length of time that you have it. And that's not how it works in homeopathy. It's not about how long you have it. And we had to actually make this distinction at HHN on the helpline at Homeopathy Help Now, because there was a time when the folks who were reviewing cases to determine if they were acute or chronic would look at something and say, this should be dealt with as a part of the larger totality of a person's symptoms. And then we had a discussion about it, and we actually changed one might say I put down a gauntlet a little bit, because I feel like there's things can be around for a while. Let's say that you had not used homeopathy forever, and you had a cough that didn't go away, and you had it for a while, and the homeopath felt that it was appropriate or safe to look at it from a small totality standpoint and to prescribe only on the context of all of the symptoms around all of the aspects of that cough, all the things that have changed from the point when the person was last well, as Hahnemann states in aphorism 6, right? If you feel that something is appropriate to give a small totality remedy for, then you give it a go if it's safe. The thing is, there are times when I don't prescribe for people acutely, and it's not often, but like when I'm working with someone who has like a complex sort of neurodegenerative condition that's their baseline chronic state,
Wow.
I'm going to have to think twice if their case is moving forward beautifully, slowly and surely toward health, right? And some little thing is happening along the way, because sometimes those little things are part of the process of healing, like a discharge might be a really appropriate part of healing. And if the bigger picture, the sort of underlying heavy lift is going, unless it's something really serious, like a broken leg is a true acute. The first wave of COVID, those were truly acute. I mean, they were acute from, an epidemic. They were a collective disease, right? But does that make sense? But like for the most part, if something is truly acute, then a homeopath is going to prescribe on it.
Okay, so then, but it's more than that, because it's not just the homeopath. And when there's a genuine acute, then the passionate home prescriber is also going to prescribe on it as well. And I'm going to say with legitimacy, right?
Well, because I think that most true acutes will be able to be mostly. No, I would say that first aid and superficial acutes, you give it a go at home. I mean, everybody should know how to do basic first aid.
Yep, domestic first aid.
Domestic first aid is totally important.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's sort of what is appropriate for a home prescriber. I think, if you've got kids and kids get an earache, they're throwing up, that kind of thing. It's like, yeah. But the limitation is if you sort of need to know how to evaluate what's happening. So like, even if a person is at home and prescribing, they should be able to recognize not even red flags, but even like a pink flag. Like, what if
a flag
you should be able to notice if the outcome isn't moving in the direction toward a higher degree of health. Right. And one of the things that people, when they start learning more about homeopathy, worry about is suppression, which, I mean, it's a real thing, but it doesn't happen that easily. Have you ever seen like real suppression happen after like a couple of doses?
Nope.
Same.
There's got to be 3 things to happen for a bad outcome, I think.
What's that?
A poor, no, not a poor, firstly, a remedy that's not close. Number 2, given far too often.
Yep.
Where in a situation where there's bad communication between the person that's taking it and the person that's suggesting it. And I've personally not really been in that kind of situation for many, many years. I don't think it's really happened on my watch. And I can't imagine any student doing it. When I say that to students, I think they chew on it.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, that's not actually going to happen. Maybe I'll relax a little about this suppression idea that I'm going to suppress.
Do you remember we had the biggest example of suppression that I've ever seen.
Oh,
Do you remember this? So this was in
this
our
was a good
teaching
one.
clinic. This was it was a long time ago, maybe 2016 or something. And a kid came to the clinic. He was maybe 5 years old or something, and he had a big regression. He lost milestones, and he had been making eye contact, had been verbal, and all of that, you know, went away. And of course, people make the assumption, oh, what had happened? Was there a vaccination that resulted in, some sort of loss of health or something like that? And when I started to ask questions, I was taking the case. And first of all, the kid wasn't vaccinated. Second of all, it happened after they'd been treated by a homeopath, someone that I know who was really good, who this kid presented with a cough and was given a remedy for the cough. And then cough came back. They gave it again and again and again. They kept going up in potency. And eventually the cough went away. And when we looked at the case a year down the road, or 2 years, whatever it was, the same thing happened, that the milestones at the time when. And so that was nerve-wracking, and we weren't sure. Like, obviously you never know what happened. So we took the case of the larger totality, inclusive of the pattern of that cough that had been there, gave the remedy, which was a broader, deep acting remedy, as opposed to a more superficial remedy that had been given over and over again to this kid. And the milestones came back. And then what happened after that? The cough came back. So that, to me, I mean, that's like really clear. And thank goodness this kid had the vitality to, it was sort of like, it was suppressed, but it was suppressed, but like in a holding pattern. It didn't get like locked in where there wasn't a release of it. It was just, that remedy was just pushing down right on an individual symptom. Now, would you call that a one-sided case?
No, I don't think it was a
I
one-sided
don't think
case.
so either.
I think it's a chronic case that was treated acutely.
Yeah, exactly.
So you would have heard Denise say before, a small totality prescription, or a small,
Yeah.
you used that language.
Yeah.
Small totality. And really that's what we mean by that. So we don't really very often talk in terms of suppressive treatment or anything like that.
It's so interesting. Sorry, this is going in a different direction than where we had planned, but let's just go with it, because one of the things that's interesting, because we started out. Wait, why are you making that face?
Because I haven't finished. And anyway,
Oh, sorry. No,
keep going.
dude, proceed.
No, because I've lost my flow.
Oh, sorry, that's my phone. Okay, so because we started by talking about like what we're teaching, and you talked about the legalities and using named conditions and so forth. And one of the the permission structure that is often used in the identification of sort of one, like a small totality to prescribe on that isn't acute, is that people often say that these are one-sided diseases. And so, Hahnemann talks about this. So this is in Aphorism 210, is where he opens up the discussion on one-sided. He says, almost all the diseases that I've termed one-sided belong to Sora. And these diseases appear to be more difficult to cure because of this one-sidedness, where all the rest of the disease symptoms vanish, as it were, before a single great prominent symptom. Okay. And then he goes on to talk about mental and emotional diseases. And he gives this whole description of how, because I'm teaching 210 to 230 next week. So this has been on my mind. But basically, this idea of the one-sided disease I think has been misinterpreted. And we could talk about this another time, but it's like to say, well, all the client is talking about is their hammer toe. So therefore, all I can prescribe on is the hammer toe. And Hahnemann basically says, actually, if all you're seeing is this one-sided state, then it's highly likely that you just have not taken a decent case. Right?
It's almost always because of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so this there's an emphasis on sort of a single aspect of a case, and then the remedy is given over and over and over again to sort of power it down. And that's what happens in protocols, right? That's why they have to deliver the remedies so much, is because it's working allopathically in some cases, and it's working it's having to, it's not stimulating the body to heal, right? It's not the minimum amount of remedy given to stimulate the body's own sort of direction toward cure, but it's actually a repeated message to make the symptoms stop. And that's where that cough thing came into place. And I have to say, because I know the homeopath that was on the other side of that prescription, she's a good homeopath. She knows her stuff. And if I could imagine being in that person's shoes, taking on an acute case without understanding or without thinking of it as the larger totality representation.
So let's sum up a little.
Yeah.
Acute and chronic mean something very specific in homeopathy,
Yeah.
and they mean something very specific in allopathic medicine, and they're different between the two.
Yep.
Second is that it's really important to identify that if whatever you're about to do, if you're about to launch with your homeopathic prescription, that you've identified that it's an acute situation. The idea being here that chronic prescribing is a world of a study and not for the faint-hearted. So is it acute? Yes or no? If it's not, then maybe leave it alone, or at least, head towards your homeopath. And so I've got that right. Those points. And then with clarity on if it's domestic first aid or an acute situation, then proceed. But proceed with a little bit of caution, especially if it's your own offspring or.
Yeah. But I suppose that's really good advice if someone is brand new to homeopathy or is a home prescriber listening to this. I'm not sure how much of our audience is that. I don't know.
Don't know.
I don't know. I don't know who listens, but I think also though about homeopaths, right? Because if you not so one of the consequences of the way that homeopathy had been taught and practiced in that post-Kentian homeopathy style is that a lot of people did not learn acute prescribing, and it was not really a part of the conversation in education.
I remember teaching for decades in the Southern Hemisphere and saying in lectures, I don't think I've ever seen an acute case. And actually, until I started to get my spider bites,
Yeah,
then they were the first genuine acutes.
because you didn't see a lot of kids.
I didn't see a lot of kids.
See, that's the thing. Well, when I worked in the outreach clinic in New York, and this was, mostly people, it was 5 years, once a week, people who were underinsured, uninsured, and homeless. And the whole idea behind the project was to treat acutes and to train the residents in acute prescribing and homeopathy, and to do research. And in all the years I was there, I think I saw 3 acutes, and they were people falling down the stairs drunk, in the subway, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Had an acute vertigo case, had an acute diarrhea, food poisoning case, but a handful in 5 years.
Yeah.
But when you see a lot of kids, you see more acutes, and you see acutes. But the thing is that because it wasn't taught, there emerged kind of weird ideas around acute prescribing, like you give the quote unquote constitutional remedy, or the simillimum will do everything. And I find it hard to believe that someone who might, have as their chronic remedy plumbum, that's going to be useful if they get an upper respiratory infection or a broken leg. Do you know what I mean? Or if they're in labor.
There's only 2 remedies that I've ever seen that have that capacity for dealing with acutes and chronics. One is phosphorus.
Yeah.
And I've seen that 100 times.
Totally.
And lachesis.
Yes.
and that seemed to be able to deal with most of the acutes that particular person got.
Also arsenicum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, not well, you bring up something really interesting, because one of the things that I would love, like if I had all the time in the world to just do all the projects I want to do,
Time in the world things.
one of the things that I would want to do is to sort of try to parse out sort of remedies by depth, right? Because there are remedies that hit at certain depths. And there's like in some of the old books, they'll talk about duration of action. I'm not sure that I trust that.
I don't trust any of that information.
But like, how could we understand? Like, one of the things I love about arsenicum is that it hits at like it's not superficial, but it doesn't like dredge up from underneath, which is why I feel like we get the momentum that we do with like upper respiratory things in people who have deep chronic issues, that it doesn't throw the cases off, or why we use arsenicum so frequently in palliative and end of life scenarios. Right. And it's interesting though, because some of the remedies that we think of as being really deep remedies have some acute data about them. I use plumbum as an example, and there are a couple I can't remember off the top of my head. I think there's something to do with like a prolapse, like an acute prolapse situation or something in plumbum. But I've never thought to use plumbum in an acute situation.
I don't think it would ever.
I tell a lie. I tell a lie, because I had a case of somebody who had a stroke and do you remember this? This was maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I was dealing with the after effects of this person's stroke, and he had been catheterized. And so there were issues with the catheter, and Staphylococcus aureus, causticum, and plumbum were 3 remedies that were sort of used at various points in his recovery, which was technically acute, but also had this connection to the chronic, which takes us back to that brackish place in between. Your waiting room is filling up with people now.
I gotta go.
You've got to teach. This is a tease.
No, I think it was good actually, because it's really good. It's a basic chat about the fact that not all symptoms are treatable by a person depending on their level of enthusiasm or study. Disease
Enthusiasm is overrated.
No,
I'm kidding, because I'm accused of being overly enthusiastic.
and disease presentations are different, and so we've just gone through a little classification which really works.
And here I have my organon. Remember last time it was not my organon? So it says,
wow.
If you can see this, because mine has all these tabs in it, because I have everything marked up. But that's all we've got for today. This is going to have to be a part 1, part 2, because he's got to go.
See you, folks.
See ya. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Are you suffering from an acute illness and need relief? Welcome to Homeopathy Help Now, your virtual clinic for accessible homeopathy care right from home. From flu symptoms to stomach bugs, minor injuries to surgery support, we provide natural and effective solutions for acute health concerns. You can meet with a homeopath online and receive personalized acute care safely and conveniently. Homeopathy works with your body to restore balance quickly and gently. Book your session today at homeopathyhelpnow.com.